I watched an interview with Joe Rogan. Uh, if some of you don't know who Joe Rogan is, he is a Taekwondo, and I say expert, and the host of the older television TV series before Ludacris, Fear Factor, and he was also a stand-up comedian, and he has a podcast slash video platform on YouTube as well. And now he's changed the venue here over the past year. But anyway, Joe Rogan was doing an interview with someone, and Bruce Lee came up, and Gene Lebell, Judo Gene Lebell. Now we know, most of us in the martial arts know, that Judo Gene Lebell was a prominent judo practitioner, an expert. I say he's an expert, and have a great deal of respect for Gene Lebell. I do. And everyone knows what my stance is on Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was an excellent martial artist during his time. But Joe Rogan made the statement that Gene Lebell was so strong and so big, had he and Bruce Lee actually engaged in a physical confrontation, that he would actually break Bruce Lee in two. He would smash him, he would crush him because of his brutal strength. But I tend to disagree. I'm not taking Bruce Lee's side, as it were, more than I am taking concepts side, practicality and principle. Now, let's put it this way. If Bruce Lee and Gene Lebell, who were friends during the time that they had interactions, especially during the Green Hornet series when Gene Lebell played a character stuntman also in that series, they were friends, as I said. Had they engaged in a actual physical confrontation, why would Bruce Lee stand still and let Gene put his hands on him in the first place, even if judo was Gene's expertise? This is what I'm getting to. We need to stop comparing a freight train with a Volvo or with a Volkswagen. We know it's a freight train, and we know it's a Volkswagen. One outweighs the other. We understand that. But when we start talking about speed, and we start talking about agility, and we start talking about cunningness as an aerial and as a elusive target, that's another thing when we're comparing that to someone who's just simply stronger and powerful. Now, if Bruce Lee had condescended and stepped away from all of his training and all of the various arts that he studied and just engaged in just judo or grappling with Gene Lebell probably would have had the better day and probably would have defeated Bruce Lee in that regard. But when you say, okay, all bets are off, Bruce, you can do whatever you want to do in this match. Gene, you can do whatever you want to do in this match. And they are both pairing up, facing each other. I would think that Bruce would be a very tactical fighter. He's not just going to stand still and let Gene put him in a strangulation hold or an arm bar or what have you. Bruce Lee's going to be elusive. He would have been, I should say. He's going to use feints or fakes. He's going to strike with his legs. His superior speed as a mobile fighter. Now let's not forget, Bruce Lee was not one-dimensional. Even though he did not live long enough for us to see what he could have been ultimately, we do know what he ultimately was during the short time that he was here. And Gene Lebell is not touted as being the greatest judo man in the world, because he was not. He is great in my estimation, in my book, but he's not touted as being the world greatest judo guy. Bruce Lee is, however, touted as being and celebrated as being the greatest martial artist, not just kung fu, but martial artist of our time. Still sits high on the list. Everybody else is beneath that. That's just simply a fact. No one can dispute that. As much as you try, no matter how hard you try. Now, let me say this before I leave. If you think, if you believe that there was someone during the time that Bruce Lee existed, lived, did his 4 or 5 major motion pictures, and he had his schools in Oakland and the other schools that he had, and all of the students that he amassed, and the celebrity that he amassed, and the celebrity stars that he taught, do you think if there was anybody else on the level of Bruce Lee during that time that was known to all of us, why are they not celebrated like Bruce Lee is? Did I miss the memo? Did we all miss the memo? Where are those other individuals in history as it relates to martial arts? The world can't lie, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just make it plain and simple. Let's call it what it is. The world cannot be that deceived by whomever that they would take this one Asian guy, this Chinese man that we know as Bruce Lee, and say he's the greatest martial artist of our time, and forget everybody else who was great during that time. Doesn't make sense, does it? Had there been somebody else by a different name who was as good or greater than Bruce Lee during that time, wouldn't they be celebrated today as the greatest martial artist of all time? So you see, there was none that surfaced during his time. That's why he is beholden. That's why he is the one who is deserving of that title. Now again, don't get your underwear twisted. I've already said this. There were people as good as and better than Bruce Lee during that time. And I, a Bruce Lee follower, say that and I admit that. However, they did not surface during his time, during his lifetime. Doesn't mean that they didn't exist. Bruce Lee still is, however, from all records, the greatest martial artist of our time. Even in today's modern day, martial arts, so-called mixed martial arts, so-called ultimate fighting championships, so-called whatever, Bruce Lee is still number one. You can't have a conversation about martial arts legitimately and his name not come up. You just can't, because he was a pioneer and an innovator that we will probably never see anyone of his caliber and our time, or type I should say, in our lifetime. That's it. And that's all. What do you think about Tarantino's film depiction of Bruce Lee's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Let me know. I'm out.